Testing 1 2, testing 1 2, testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Oh, that actually sounds pretty clean. All right. Well, hello, 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 hello. Tonight, I'm actually going to do my podcast, but I'm not going to be answering anything in the chat area because tonight I'm actually, well, with the podcast, it's pretty much for the listeners. But I've decided to start doing them more so I can actually be heard. So I'm getting ready to start doing that. So if you have any questions, I want you guys to actually sit down and write down the questions because I'm going to go back possibly on my next live and do like we did a couple weeks ago where I brought somebody on and we can have a conversation because that's the one thing I want to do. Make sure we all have a connection because that was the whole point in doing this. And, you know, it's to gather understanding and, not to get too far off subject. Quick shout out to, what is that? Boom, can you see it? Tommy Sotomayor. I went and got the watermelon Red Bull. And yes, it is everything he said it was. So without further ado, again, I'm going to leave the chat on. The super chat is available so you guys can actually do the donations through that. Or you can hit one of the donation links. If it's not in the chat, you can actually go to one of my other videos. Hit the Cash App. I didn't even bother putting any of that stuff up today. Because for the most part, I want to go through this because it was, to me, this is something that was important, especially because today is Memorial Day. So, like I said, without further ado, here we go, people. Welcome, everyone, to the Supreme Decisions Legal Minute podcast, and I am your host, Supreme Decisions. Now, today is Memorial Day 2021, and for the most part, it's the first episode of June, last conversation we're going to have in May. And I want to bring out something because I'm not going to do any ads in this one. This is pretty much just going to be a straight talk through. Now, one thing about Memorial Day is that the whole purpose of it is to honor the fallen soldiers that went out and defended this country for our freedoms against tyranny, both foreign as well as domestic. So that's the celebration of the day. It's not just about barbecues and good eats and all that good stuff, but it's about the one thing that I look at as the ground rule for the fight itself. So I want to start off with something because I went and watched a show, or I guess a documentary of sort. And it was called Policing the Police. And just so happens that's the name of this podcast, which is on all your podcasting platforms. But I'm going to start off with the fact that we're often told that we should trust the police because they're wearing a uniform and they're the good guys. And they're professional, according to Officer Robert Dingle, or Kelvin Dingle, excuse me. And for the most part, are there good cops? And I think that's the oxymoron in this situation, because I'm giving you several examples. I'm going to talk about some stats. I'm even going to talk about some things that you may not want to hear. But I want to talk about an Army veteran, Anthony Hill, or excuse me, a Navy veteran, Anthony Hill. He was killed by a DeKalb County police officer by the name of Robert Olson. At the time of Anthony Hill's death, Anthony Hill was completely naked. The officer felt that he was such a threat and he was in such imminent danger that he decided that the idea of Anthony Hill was enough to say he was in fear for his life and then take the life of Mr. Hill. But because Robert Olson was a good guy, he was a police officer, he was doing the right thing, Robert Olson lied about the events. Robert Olson was later convicted of aggravated assault, because just like whenever I did in my video, I told you guys when a police officer points their weapon, it is an aggravated assault. Whenever they're subjecting you to felonious conditions, it is an unlawful arrest. When you are making false statements, it's perjury. Robert Olson was later convicted of aggravated assault, making false statements, and a violation of oath of office. Now, which is funny to me because I've been told by several people that there's no such thing as a violation of oath of office. An officer has never been convicted of that. Well, because of the 2015 killing of naked Navy veteran Anthony Hill, Robert Olson in DeKalb County was convicted of those things. Now, I say this, well, actually, I read that to say this. Many of us have never experienced the fact of the police being used as a weapon against them. Many of us have kind of made it a joke when we see people, or we call the Karens, and they're calling the police on someone just because they are in fear, because they are trained to believe the programming. And the funniest thing is, I was listening to a New York rapper by the name of My Son. And he said something today that was the most profound thing I had heard in a long time. And as T.I. would say, it was prolifically profound. And the verse, I'm going to read it for you. He said, the image they project, it doesn't be what you thought. I don't blame them anymore. It be what they taught. I'm going to say that one more time. The image they project, it doesn't be what you thought. I don't blame them anymore. It be what they taught. Now, often you hear me speak about the programming. They'll give you a statistic, or they'll tell you certain things, or they'll do something, as I've used the words, weaponizing my skin. I even put a post on Instagram where I spoke about me being looked at as less of a human Because again, I even speak about the war on the poor. What happens when that war goes beyond the poor? Because of the image that they're projecting. When people are believing the programming, what happens then? I looked at a point where a young man, 6'4", 300-pound man, played for, I believe, the Seattle Seahawks, Michael Bennett. He was in Las Vegas. There was a shooter inside a casino in Las Vegas. Michael Bennett, 6'4", 297 pounds, began to run. Police had a description of the shooter. Well, while Michael Bennett was running, he was tackled by a police officer in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas police officer throws him down. It was actually a pretty good tackle. Puts a gun to Michael Bennett's head and tells him, "I will blow your effing brains out." Michael Bennett is like, "Why are you doing this?" Now, just to paint a little bit of picture, because again, the image they project, it doesn't be what you thought. Michael Bennett was amongst several people that were running because several people heard the gunshots. The description the police had was not a 6'4", 300-pound, dark-skinned male. It was a 5'9", 200-pound white male. The explanation that the officer was then given to Michael Bennett while he was in handcuffs was, "The reason I told you I would blow your effing brains out because we were looking for a shooter was to protect you." He was doing Michael Bennett a favor. I'm going to say that one more time. He was doing Michael Bennett a favor by telling him, "I'm going to blow your effing brains out. Because we're not looking for you, we're looking for someone else, but I'm going to spend my time with you." Because the image they project, it don't be what you thought. Now, I went into watching Policing the Police. And the one thing that was funny to me was the verbiage, because I always talk about words have power. And the context of it, it was the most hilarious thing I'd ever seen in my life, because the narrative that was placed was the country was on fire and people blamed the police. Officer Kelvin Dingle gets more than 1 million views because he's tired of people not waving at him because they're blaming the police. They're not saluting him because they're blaming the police. Not smiling at him because the country is on fire and they're blaming the police. And even at the time, the president referred to the people asking for accountability as war on the police. But yet we look at a reform bill where the police are given grenade launchers. We look at a Supreme Court decision of Jordan B. Prince when we see the simple fact of we're giving grenade launchers to children, or what to equate to the mentality of a child. But the war is on the police. In the meanwhile, Anthony Smith in Valdosta, Georgia, is speaking and cooperating with police officers. Because again, we're told police will not hurt you if you just do what they ask you. If you wasn't committing a crime, police won't bother you. Anthony Smith in Valdosta, Georgia. I'm going to say this again because, again, these are the things that are being told to us because the image they project, it don't be what you thought. Anthony Smith in Valdosta, Georgia, is speaking with police. He is cooperating with police. Another officer shows up on a scene and slams Anthony Smith to the ground, breaking his arm. And guess what? Anthony Smith isn't even a suspect. Anthony Smith was a witness. But we're told to believe that that was okay because the image they project, it don't be what you thought. And at the end of the day, the most beautiful part about this is that one incident contradicts every naysayer whenever I'm speaking about bad policing. When I'm talking about the mistrust isn't misplaced. When I speak about holding them accountable and them rushing to judgment without the totality of circumstances, their information, their policy, without them doing what they said they're supposed to do. The image they project, it don't be what you thought. But now I'm supposed to accept what your perceived reality is, when in fact my reality is completely different. LaToya James is shot by police in her cousin's home while the police were executing a drug warrant. The police said she was shooting at them, yet no gun was found near her and no drugs in the house. But the image they project, it don't be what you thought. I don't blame them no more. It be what they taught. Because the programming's working. Because you're not even hearing LaToya James' name in the news. There's no marches for LaToya James. There was no marching for Anthony Hill. There was no marching for Michael Ramos. There's no marching for Anthony Smith. But we are at war with the police because we're asking them for transparency. We're at war with the police because we're asking them not to lie in reports. We're at war with police because we're saying, do your job properly. You know, the one that you signed up for, the one that you went through the training for, the one that you made a conscious decision to accept, knowing prior to doing it, it was going to be dangerous, knowing prior to doing it, you were going after supposedly criminals. But then it brings the context to me of, I'm a 70s baby. I grew up on this dude named Scarface. He said, I live in a town where the police commit more crimes than the criminals. I'm going to say that one more time. Scarface said he's from a town where the police commit more crimes than the criminals. Then we look at Robert Olson. We look at Anthony Smith. We look at LaToya James. Hell, we look at George Floyd. We look at Breonna Taylor. We look at Andrew Brown Jr. The DA called his murder by police justified, while at the same time lying about 2 hours of video. I don't blame them no more. It be what they taught. Because Andrew Brown Jr., one of those people that I spoke about again with Breonna Taylor, was murdered by police while they were executing a drug warrant, while not having any accountability, while not turning over video, and then saying it was justified while lying in their reports or using the words of police officers came in contact with Mr. Brown's vehicle, which is why they began to fire upon him, leaving out the fact that the police officers put themselves and made contact. Not that Andrew Brown Jr. targeted them, but that they were in touching distance of the vehicle while it was in motion. Not that he was using the vehicle as a weapon, but that they placed themselves in harm's way. It's almost the equivalent of flopping in the NBA. But then we're supposed to trust them because they're the good guys. But if you're good, why are you hiding? If what you did was right, why are you lying? But when I ask for that, why am I the one that's waging war? If you have all these non-lethal weapons and you're using the one lethal weapon against the people you made a choice to protect, why shouldn't I ask you to do your job properly? Why am I now a problem? Because I'm asking for, you know what? Let me go for it because again, it's one of those things where it comes where it resonates a little close to me. Because I think about the amount of times I've been thrown to the ground in DeKalb County. I look at story after story after story after story after story of my encounters in DeKalb County. Have I had encounters in Fulton County? Yes. Have I had encounters in Gwinnett County? Yes. Have I had encounters in Douglas County? Absolutely. None of them equated to my experiences in DeKalb County. Now, here's the crazy part. I'm going to say something good about DeKalb County. I didn't have completely horrible encounters on every DeKalb County issue. I've actually been standing in court after pleading guilty to something, I think I was 20 at the time, and then have a police officer who was not there completely lie. And then the judge tells me that I can't get out even though I've pled guilty to what I was guilty of because I was saying the police officer is lying. And then when I posed it to the judge, if I'm already pleading guilty, everything that I've done is on video, why is he lying? That was the wrong question to ask because, again, Tony Robbins tells you to ask better questions. But what happened is the officer that arrested me then walks in with said video. The video 100% contradicted the police officer's testimony who wasn't there. But then again, why should I trust him if it's on video and he's lying? How is he a good guy if he wasn't there, but he's making an assessment and creating he's using a hypothesis, creating a narrative, and hoping, since I had already pled guilty, that he can do less work. But he's a good guy. But here's the thing. Again, I talked about the false narrative, and I talked about how the DA in the Andrew Brown Jr. case is withholding 2 hours of video. He allowed the family of Andrew Brown Jr. to witness 12 minutes of video out of the 5 body cameras, which was it was 12 minutes in total, not 12 minutes from 5. It was 12 minutes in total. And then we go into 4 officers that I spoke about on the last podcast. Lying on police reports, planning drugs during searches, even quitting because they were unable, or as they put it, they weren't being protected when they were hurting people on video. Even had a few that urinated on the property of council members who spoke out for reform. But they were being punished for doing what they were trained to do. But I'm the problem for asking them to do their job correctly, the one that they signed up for. Then on the daily, we sit back and watch an officer after officer across this country engage in a pattern of unconstitutional behavior. Then they want to use the excuse of, you have to understand, as if no one knew prior to becoming a police officer that some actual criminals don't want to go to jail. Some actual criminals shoot back. I'm supposed to understand that, as if they didn't know that prior to signing up, prior to filling out the application, prior to starting the training, prior to wanting to even do the job. I'm supposed to understand a decision a grown person made that didn't consult me prior to it. I'm supposed to understand that. Because here's my question. Do I also have to understand when a window washer falls to his death? Do I have to understand that window washing, goodness, do I have to understand window washing is dangerous? I have to understand that, because washing windows 30 stories in the air is dangerous. I need to understand that. Or a truck driver driving off a cliff. Driving trucks is dangerous. I need to understand that. Or here's a great one. Because back in the day, I used to love David Eaton. Most of you that actually like, high-end shoes know who I'm talking about. David Eaton, shout out in Miami, Florida, because I bought a couple of shoes from you. Now, because I wear a 14, they used to always joke, well, we had to kill an extra gator. But should I understand that working at David Eaton in their alligator farm that was dangerous making shoes? Or did I just want the damn shoes? Because they never said, well, I lost a finger, but you got to understand that we're dealing with alligators. No, I didn't care. Because I just want the shoes. So no, I don't understand your job duties. I didn't sign up for it. You did. I didn't make a choice to be a police officer. You did. And this is where it comes back to, the greatest among you shall be a servant to all, but when you're making a choice to not serve, why should I then understand? Your whole oath of office says you're going to serve and be a trustee of the people. Then you want to go out and actually berate, batter, and criminalize every person. What am I understanding? That you're not competent enough to fulfill the duties that you said and swore to God that you do? Is that what I'm supposed to understand? Or am I supposed to make an excuse because you're the good guy, because you simply put on a uniform, not that you're going through the actions that are supposed to be that the uniform symbolizes? Because again, when I talk about Memorial Day, when I talk about the tomb of the unknown soldiers, I'm talking about these people that sacrificed their actual lives. Was I supposed to understand before they actually went to war? Did they not know prior to signing up that this country is susceptible to shooting some missiles at somebody? Did they not know prior to getting into the service that if they went to another country, it's possible somebody might shoot at them? Possible. But they lay down their lives for the greater good. They lay down their lives to protect the freedoms that we have, foreign as well as domestic. Now, I wasn't brave enough to put the uniform on. Let's call a spade a spade. No, I did not serve. But one thing I can be proud of is that my father served. His father served. My ex's, her father served. My children's grandfather, they served. Had a couple uncles that served. Several of my brothers served. Several of my friends served and are currently serving. Do I appreciate that? Absolutely. But again, understand what it is I'm saying. They're not asking me to understand that being in the service is dangerous. They're not making excuses for not being accountable for their actions. They're going out and they're doing their job. Period. So when you're sitting down and you're saying, hey, you need to understand. What is it that I'm understanding? What am I missing? Because the image they project, it don't be what you thought. I don't blame them no more. It be what they taught. Because they're teaching us Jordan B. City of Philadelphia. Police departments aren't hiring those with above average intelligence. So when they say that we're being punished, we're not being protected for doing what they're training us to do, I believe them. However, whenever I make a choice, I can't expect everybody to be happy about it. Hell, there's not a lot of people that smile when I walk past them myself. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, because when I walk, I understand what it is that I'm attempting to accomplish. We look at a police reform bill that addresses none of the issues of policing, such as police mental health, nor police retraining. These are the issues that we have. The thing that everybody's pushing for, police reform, police reform, police reform, seems just like defund the police, defund the police, defund the police, when in fact, it needs to be, let's get smarter police officers. Let's retrain the ones we do have. Because police are never happy to, understand. Because here's what I want police to understand. They're telling me I need to understand that their job is dangerous. Guess what? I knew that prior to me being born, because it was dangerous in the 1800s. It was dangerous all through the 1900s. Guess what? It's going to continue to be dangerous. One is because the current method of policing is horrible. You can dance around whatever word that you want to put there. Horrible is mine. Because nobody's ever happy to see a police officer when they show up because something has horribly gone wrong. Whether it's a traffic ticket, whether it's somebody's fighting. I've been sitting down when people have been shot. I've been there when people have been stabbed. I wasn't happy to see a police officer. It wasn't a calm down moment. But then when we talk about police mental health, they have the high suicide rates. They have the high domestic violence rate. Why? Because they're trained no snitching. We can't even go talk to anybody about their issues. You know why? Because every time they show up, 90% of their day is fucked up. So what is it I'm supposed to understand? Especially when everything that we're telling you to do is a problem and nothing that we're asking for is being addressed. Because very few are even trained properly. Even fewer actually know law, which makes them incompetent to do law enforcement. I'm going to say that one. Very few are trained properly. Even fewer know the law, which makes them incompetent to perform their duties as law enforcement. Because I'm pretty sure, as Officer Kevin Dingle asked for the professionalism that they were trained to do, Anthony Hill would have loved to have seen some professionalism during his moment of mental issues. There are several people in Arizona that would have loved professionalism during their moment of mental issues. But we have uneducated, improperly trained, and unknowing people showing up to these situations. I actually don't even remember why I wrote this, but for some reason I sat down and I wrote equal justice under the law. I don't even know why. Why would I have the audacity to believe that that actually means something? Equal justice under the law. Hell, my moniker actually reads justice for all. But then again, we have to ask the question, what's your level of justice? St. Louis police officer Matthew Eisen, who's number 26, he's actually number 26, he's 26 years old. He shot an unarmed man in the back. Right? Sounds pretty typical. He lied on his report and stated the suspect reached in his waistband while climbing a wooden fence. I'm guessing this dude was Plastic Man. Because if he can climb a fence and reach in his waistband and draw a gun, no. But again, Matthew Eason, because he wears a uniform, I'm supposed to smile at him. I'm supposed to salute him. Matthew Eason is a deity. I'm not supposed to ask for accountability, according to Officer Kelvin Dingle. Richard Jackson, Dallas County, a former Texas prosecutor, withheld evidence, got multiple men life sentences. Wrongful convictions, didn't care about truth or justice. But here's the thing, these men are still in prison. The only thing they have was grounds for appeal to reopen their case. That's it. No punishment. This man literally took people's lives. But we're told that we're supposed to trust them because if we just cooperate, police won't do anything wrong. But then we go back to the statement that about a month ago, Tommy Sotomayor stated. System has 5 rings. The people, 95% don't fight back. The police, they don't know law. The prosecutor doesn't care about evidence. Defense, they don't vigorously defend. And the judges don't care. I just told you about a police officer, Matthew Eason, who didn't know law, and then he lied. Told you about Richard Jackson, a prosecutor who didn't care that a police officer such as Matthew Eason lied. And you had a judge who went along with whatever was thrown in front of him and took multiple men's lives. And now I go back to the 65% of people that are on death row that are being released because they are not guilty. The image they project, it don't be what you thought, because they'll tell you someone that has been arrested by a police officer, they did something wrong. They'll tell you that somebody that's been in jail is a convict. They are a criminal. They shouldn't be trusted. Yet these men's lives, from a lying police officer to an uncaring prosecutor to a judge who didn't give any shits, are forever branded because the image they projected don't be what you thought. I don't blame them anymore because it be what they taught. New York cop bragged about being the most corrupt cop to other cops. His name was Robert Smith. He pulled guns on several black folks for enjoyment. He did it for shits and giggles, but again, we're supposed to trust them because they're the good guys. He robbed people. He shook down business owners while he was a cop. But again, we're supposed to trust him because he's wearing a uniform. He's a good guy. And if we're doing nothing wrong and just cooperating, we don't have to worry about the police. These are things that are being told to us. This good guy, Robert Smith, transported heroin throughout New York. I don't blame them no more. It be what you taught. Because the image they project, it don't be what you thought. And it brings me to a quote by Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther the King. He said, you can't legislate morality, but you can regulate behavior. The problem is when you don't want to regulate behavior, when you don't want to hire those with any intelligence, because it's difficult to train someone that's smart. It's difficult to send somebody out to do savagery that looks at others as human. Two minutes of a 46-minute video of a police encounter showed 0% of what a police officer swore under oath was true. And I'm not sure if you guys remember or if you're a part of my masterclass or not, but I used the word or used the phrase that police are taught stock language. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples. I'm in fear for my life. We heard that about Eric Gardner in New York. We heard that about the young man that was down in Oklahoma City that was shot in the back. We heard that from a police officer that killed Philando Castile in South Carolina. We heard that in California when Orlando was shot in his own yard. We constantly hear that across the country because, again, stock language is what we're taught is okay. because the image they projected doesn't be what you thought. Because again, if you hear, I'm in fear for my life, or when we watch a video where a police officer yells, stop resisting, while they're constantly beating on someone that's not moving. Stock language. Is basically used to manufacture an excuse for their criminal behavior. Because remember, where the cops commit more crimes than the criminals. The officer that did this is still working. They didn't take him off the force, didn't reprimand him, even though he was caught. He's still working. Now, to a case that's been in the news for the past week. It's part of why I actually kind of been dragging with this, because again, I wrote this probably about 2 weeks ago. Matter of fact, I look at May 19th, because the day I wrote it down was the day that the tape was released to the public. And what bothered me was you have Trooper Dakota Moss, who was accused or convicted of beating another motorist, Trooper Corey York, and Trooper Chris Hollingsworth. They had a young man you know what? Young man, last name of Green. They stated that Green was traveling at speeds of over 120 miles per hour and that they chased him down, and they told Green's family that he had been killed in a car crash. Now, let's listen to some of this stock. Green was held face down for 9 minutes after needing medical. That sounds a little familiar because we just watched a young man that was face down for 8 minutes and 46 seconds who lost his life because of that. He was tased repeatedly while handcuffed. They put him in a chokehold and punched him in the face. Another drugged him while having him hogtied, face down across the concrete by his feet. Now, let's go into it. Dakota DeMoss beat another motorist. He was later charged with that. Chris Hollingsworth, he bragged about beating Green. He died in a crash after being told he was going to be fired because it came out that there was a whistleblower for him beating Green. Corey York turned off his body cam while he grabbed Green by his feet and drugged him face first while he was handcuffed across the concrete. But again, these are good guys. These good guys lied to this man's this man's family. They beat him profusely for shits and giggles, but I'm supposed to trust him. And here's the crazier part about this whole situation. The encounter lasted more than 46 minutes. Keep that in mind. He was face down for 9 minutes. But the entire beating lasted more than 46 minutes. The troopers turned off their body cameras and microphones. 6 troopers were on the scene. Only 2 had body cameras on. This remained hidden for 2 years. Louisiana DA stated that the troopers tasing, choking, punching, dragging a handcuffed and shackled man was justified. It was awful, but it was lawful. I'm going to say that one more time because, again, as much as people don't like Tommy Sotomayor. They don't like the language he uses. The simple fact is, when you listen to him and actually hear what's being said, there's 5 rings in this. The people, 95% don't fight back. You have the police who are incompetent in not being able to perform their jobs properly, and they're lying. You have DAs who justify their actions and okay their lies because they don't care about evidence. The DA from Louisiana stated the troopers tasing, choking, punching, and dragging a handcuffed and shackled man was justified on his face for 46 minutes. It was awful but lawful. Lying in their police reports was awful but lawful. Lying to this man's family was awful but lawful. An unspecified traffic stop started this entire encounter. Because again, do we believe now that he was traveling 120 miles per hour in a pickup truck? Do we really believe that? The video started an encounter. Green was in his truck with his hands up, saying, okay. Hands up. He was surrendering. He was not resisting. They shocked and tased him through the window. They drug him out of his car, told him to put his hands behind his back. Yet, the same DA said, the body cam footage that was leaked, the 46-minute encounter that was leaked from the 10th of May, 2019, that was leaked the 19th of May, 2021, literally 2 years and 9 days after the fact, was premature. But I'm a problem because I'm asking you to do your job properly. There's a war on police because we're asking for accountability, but yet a handcuffed and shackled man drug on his face, lying to his people about what actually caused his death. And then the releasing of a leaked video is premature 2 years after the fact. It was awful but lawful. But I'm the problem. And this one here is actually for my people down in Houston. Because I actually, most of you guys know, pretty much last year, during the pandemic, I pretty much lived in Harris County, down in Houston. Precinct 1, Robert B. Johnson. He was accused of the sexual abuse of children. Yes, multiple. He committed suicide and confessed. And then he broke the blue wall because he snitched. I was told when I said something about this initially that he wasn't talking about other police officers, and these were older children. They just used the word children. Well, here's a question for my police apologist. Tell me again why I trust him. Because I got police officers planting drugs at traffic stops. I got police officers lying about injuries caused during traffic stops. I have police officers sexually assaulting children after traffic stops. And where are these good officers that Kevin Dingle tells me there is? Because Robert B. Johnson told on multiple police officers. Because they took an oath to be held to a higher standard. Yet they want no accountability from that standard. They don't even want to live up to the standard to which they cannot be questioned. They don't even want to live up to it. Because heavy is the head that wears the crown. And here's why. And because I always tell people, whenever we talk about, I hear people say, oh, I'm a boss. I put a post on Instagram, and it says, sometimes a king has to show these peasants why he's king. And it was a lion with blood all over his face. Sometimes you have to show them. When people talk about, oh, I'm a boss. Everybody wants to be a boss until it's time to do what a boss does. Now, a lot of people, oh, well, I make money. I'm a boss. That's not what a boss does. A boss makes decisions for the collective and accepts the responsibility from those decisions. That's not what police are doing. I'm going to say that one more time. Bosses make decisions for the collective, and then they accept the responsibility from those decisions. When you are hiding videotapes, when you are lying about statements of actual incidents that are on video, you're not trying to accept the decision. And it's something that I'm supposed to be cool with, right? Right. And each public servant took an oath of servitude to the public. But most make a choice not to even follow that oath because the image they project, it don't be what they thought. I don't blame them anymore because it be what they taught. Sometimes you may not listen because a lot of times nowadays, for the most part, we hear a lot of what they call mumble rap. I grew up in a time where we started with self-destruction. Self-destruction, you're headed for self-destruction. And then we had Public Enemy, Fight the Power. Then you had a little bit more directness with Tupac. Because Brenda had a baby, but Brenda's barely got a brain. A damn shame. The girl can hardly spell her name. Then you had Belly. At the end of Belly, most of you might want to go back and take a look at it. There's a 3-minute speech that's given by the pastor. Now keep in mind, he's talking about now, because he speaks of 25 years into the future. Crimes with no real punishment. These are the things that we're witnessing each and every day. The problem is, not only are we looking at it through the eyes of our children, where they're taking away from education and they're giving to prisons. We're big upping those that go to prison. We're shaming those that want an education. And then we have the George Floyd murder pushing for police reform in a bill that doesn't reform police. Because you can't legislate morality. and nobody wants to regulate the behavior because the image they project, it don't be what you thought. Now, I looked at this guy, Jelani Cobb. He's an activist and journalist. In Policing the Police, he went to Newark, New Jersey. But along the way, there were a lot of things that he saw, and there were a lot of things that I noticed in this documentary. Now, one of the things that I thought was profound, not prolifically profound, but just profound, was Trevor Noah asked a question, or actually made a great quote. Because if you're simply relying on the mechanism of bureaucracy to function on your behalf, it's not going to happen. And this is what I actually just credited at Trevor Noah. That was actually Jelani Cobb on Trevor Noah's show, where he stated that if you're simply relying on the mechanism of bureaucracy to function on your behalf, it's not going to happen. Because what happens is, if you want change, you have to create change. You know what? I think it was Michael Jackson, Make That Change. You know it? Shimon. Anyway, the one thing that I think you guys will actually remember from me, because if you're creating the change, you got to remember no one loves you like you. I've even told those people that I help, guess what? I care less about that situation than you do. Because the second I care more about it than you do, you've lost, because you're the one fighting. You're the one that has to go through it. You're the one suffering from it. All I can do is be a guide. That's it. So if I care more about the situation than you do, you've lost. Because now you get into the realm of V for Vendetta. Do you see what I see? Do you feel what I feel? Because no one else can stand for you. You have to stand up. You have to be willing to go through the fire. You have to be willing to be that monster. You have to be willing to look the devil in the eye. And the one thing I liked about it was people often ask me, why don't you take a ride along? Why don't you take a ride? Guess what? It doesn't change that these police officers are not intelligent. It doesn't change the fact that most of these cops have no clue what law is. But Jelani Cobb actually did take a ride along. He did a couple of them. He did a couple of ride-alongs with a gang unit. And basically, at that point, the gang unit was the source of most of Newark's police issues. And the complaint was their aggressive tactics. Now, again, I told you guys about the AU Center, which is the Atlanta University Center, for those that don't know what the AU Center is. Well, in the ATL, in the 90s, they had what they called the tennis shoe boys. At night, they were super aggressive. Generally, they were not in police cars, they were in pickup trucks. And whenever you saw them, it was too late. Like, it was the funniest thing ever. And the thing that was funny to me was, because I've only had a couple of encounters with them, and the one thing I actually learned was too fat to be running from them, also too slow. So it was no sense in taking an ass whooping and going to jail, I think after like the second time, you know what, yeah, y'all come and just come on. But they were super aggressive. They were overzealous for the most part. But here's the thing that I thought was hilarious, because again, most of the time when I talk about it, it's the war on the poor. And when I think about where my encounters took place with the tennis shoe boys in Atlanta, it was generally in, just like in Newark, they work primarily poor minority areas, such as projects, wards, or homes.
Fifth Ward, Ninth Ward, Grady Homes, Jennings Homes, the homes. Because I'm going to get into it one day why they call them projects. Anyway, officers often use the words hunting for guns, which they did. They replaced the words stop and frisk with field inquiries, because stop and frisk, that's illegal. But field encounters, in their mind, was legal. They're doing the exact same thing, because here's the great part about it. They're supposed to report every stop and frisk. They weren't reporting every stop and frisk, which is an illegal arrest. But again, we're supposed to trust them. They're the good guys. And they honestly believe, just because the phrase was different, that their action was different. And remember, they're being punished for doing what they're trained to do. They're not being protected for stopping and frisking people, which is illegal. But we're supposed to trust them because they're the good guys. And they also use the ebonics or slang, because here's the thing I always tell people: just because you change the meaning of a word does not mean the word itself is changed. Such as cap and cap. What did I just say? Because there's a cap on a soda. There's a cap I can put on my head. I can cap off a roof. But if you ask a young person that's speaking ebonics, they're going to tell you a cap is a lie. So did I put a lie on a roof? Did I put a lie on my head? Did I put a lie on the top of this soda bottle? But have they actually changed the meaning of the word cap? Just because you use it differently doesn't change the meaning at all. But then the one thing about it is Jelani Cobb then asked, how is the determination made to perform a field inquiry on a certain person? Because again, they substituted an action with words, thinking it changed the words, which made an illegal act a legal act, even though they were performing the same duty. Okay. The officer responds, you develop a certain skill of learning how to read people. Yet law dictates they can't use a guess or hypothesis. You remember that pesky ass Terryville, Ohio. They have to be able to particularize. Not a hunch. But I'm the problem because I'm asking for accountability. I'm a problem because I'm asking you to do your job properly. Then we read body language. Now here's the one thing that I love. They even use the trigger as looking at them. So if you make eye contact with a police officer, you must be a criminal. But yet, I'm about to go a little deeper real quick because I'm going to say some real asshole shit right now. Because one of the things that I enjoyed was the fact that while my father was an asshole, while I didn't like him, one of the things he did make sure I was able to do was look a man in his eye. So if you're trained with a father or a sturdy father figure that teaches you how to be a man, police use that as an excuse to have a field inquiry with you. Just want to drop that jewel because, again, sometimes the image they projected don't be what you thought. Because I don't blame them no more, because it be what you taught. Understanding. I didn't like him. Probably won't ever like him. But I appreciated every jewel he gave me. And I just hate that now that he's gone, these are the times I'm reflecting and accepting those jewels. Because he even told me, when I'm gone, you'll get this. I thought he was a crazy old man. Now I'm the crazy dude accepting all this craziness. Because now I'm looking at it. My eyes are open. They also went on to state, and some don't comply with a show of authority. Some don't comply with a show of authority. Stop. Remember Terryville, Ohio. If a police officer is giving you instructions without a crime, go over there, sit down, stand up, do a hopscotch. That's an illegal stop because that's a show of authority stop because that counts as a seizure. When you're following commands, it is unlawful if there is no crime that can be articulated. But see, whenever I say must, which that's not what that says, but yet it says must in, you know what? I'm not even gonna go deep into that. But the one that I actually love is the fact they say, if you pull away from me, that means you're a criminal. Here's my thing. The one thing that I've loved in my life is the fact that I've always been a bigger dude. So while there have been things that have been done to me while I was handcuffed, while I've been on the ground, I've actually been kicked in the face by a cop. A lot of times I have not had, I've been roughed up. But there has never been a time where a cop has run up on me and just grabbed me. Because most of the time they wait till I lay down or something. Because I understand what the fight is. And it's not on the street. I'm not going to win the one on the street. Because I don't smile a lot. So a bullet in my ass is okay. That's just the price of doing business. So no, I'm not going to give you the excuse. I understand the things such as parade rest. I understand that putting myself in a non-aggressive position or a non-aggressive posture, non-threatening, because again, I understand the tactics of it. I take away excuses. So I've never had like the really aggressive ones, but I've had friends that told me, yeah, a cop run up on me and he snatched me up. But here's my thing. If I walk up on a random ass person and I just grab them, I'm going to expect them to kind of, hey, what are you doing? Cops use that as a means of calling you a criminal. Because I'm even going one step further because my son said in this song, they couldn't get rid of slavery because it was too many residuals, because they don't call you slaves no more. They call you criminals. So what they've done, they've created or they've criminalized life. And in the midst of criminalizing life, it becomes something different. Because remember, you don't have to participate at all in a police investigation because you have the right to remain silent. Florida v. Royer says they can holler your name. It's on them. Why? Because they are the accusers. They have to prove everything. And this damn Fifth Amendment, you have a means of remaining private in your person and property. The Fourth Amendment protects against unlawful searches and seizures. The First Amendment says you can't trespass my eyes. So even if I am trained by my dad to look a man in his eye, you can't even use that against me. Because I've even stated that 2 out of 3 times every time a police officer makes a decision is wrong. That's 66%. I told you about putting up baseball numbers. Well, I'm going to go one step farther because the feds actually said it's 3 out of every 4 times they make an unlawful decision. 3 out of every 4. That's 75%. So they're only correct 25% of the time. Isn't that crazy? So you want me to trust somebody that's going to be right 1 time out of every 4 times they make a decision. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to get real assholish. You ready? I want you men. I want you to look at your wife and ask her, if I'm wrong, 3 out of every 4 times, will you trust me? But that's what the police apologists want me to do. Somebody that's wrong 3 out of every 4 times they make a decision. Jelani Cobb asked a police officer that came in contact with a 13-year-old boy, was he justified in being concerned about his older brother? Now, the police officer responds, yes, but. Now, I don't know what you guys know about butts, but I'm from Atlanta. I'm from the butt capital of the world. Now, the context that I just gave you was completely different from the actual context of what the word butt is. Simply because, just because I changed the word doesn't mean that the word means something else. Anyway, he responded, yes, but. Now, when you throw a but after agreeing with somebody, you're disagreeing with that person. His response after that is, this 13-year-old sees who we are, but again, he sees a person that's not educated. He sees a person that makes a decision wrong 3 out of every 4 times he does it. He also sees a person that's not trained properly. He sees someone that's aggressive. So again, why should he trust that when someone who lives with them don't trust them? Because just as someone who lives with you wouldn't trust you. I wish, you know what, if LeBron James shot 25% from the field, would you call him a great shooter? Would you trust him with the last shot? Hell, he's hitting that at, I believe, 40% right now. He's hitting a last-second shot 40% of the time, and people are still saying he's not clutch. But a police officer is hitting that shot once out of every 4 times, but they want us to believe that they're clutch. Are you kidding me? How many 25% shooters are there in the NBA that we trust with the last shot? Yeah, I can't think of any either. But now, Kevin Ingles saw bad police officers every day. Right? He actually talked about that on his on one of the TV shows he went on. So what does he think this 13-year-old is seeing? Even though he says he sees who we are. If he's seeing bad police officers every day who's making bad decisions 3 out of every 4 times, that's who he's seeing. Because again, you're beating up anybody that films you. You're making it unlawful to film you, and then you're saying that you're not going to release any videos that you have. And here's what I want you to understand something. Jelani Cobb later asked, and I'm going to paraphrase from it, is it possible the police the people in this country and not violate their God-given rights? Is it possible? The police officers respond? Absolutely. That's what happens every night. Here's the crazy part. Jelani actually responded. The DOJ, Department of Justice, says otherwise. Police officers respond, well, that's their opinion. I'm going to say that one more time. The question that was asked, is it possible to police the people in this country and not violate their God-given right? The cop said, absolutely, that happens every night. He's told, based on actual numbers, the Department of Justice says otherwise. He calls a fact an opinion. You're getting complaints. You're getting it wrong 3 out of 4 times, but it's an opinion. What? That right there lets me know they're not educated. The simple fact that you refer to a fact as an opinion lets me know that men lie, women lie, numbers don't. The numbers show that you're wrong and people aren't being policed and their rights are being violated. Every night. That's what's happening every night. Now, here's what goes on. Because again, these jackasses believe they're being punished for doing what they're trained to do. Now, they may actually be being trained improperly. I think we can always get to that. I think we can all agree with that. They're trained improperly. I think we can all agree that most are the equivalent of McDonald's workers. Why? Because their shake machine doesn't work either. Now, when you're stopping and frisking, they're performing field inquiries on people we read because guessing is illegal. No cap. Say that one more time. Yeah, we're not stopping and frisking. We're performing field inquiries because that's legal. Because we're reading the body language of people, and if they make eye contact with us, and if we jump out on them, they pull away from us, they got to be criminals. No cap. Yeah, see how stupid that sounds? The greatest thing that then happened while watching this was Jelani was telling a story of an officer pointing his weapon at him at the initial point of the encounter. Detective Ricardo Riello then states, you can point your weapon at someone and then give them commands to comply until the threat is neutralized. Wait, what? So you immediately walk up on someone. You assess that they are a threat and you pull your gun. But yet, what happened to all these non-lethal options that you have? And then what threat is a dude wearing a baseball uniform for you to be pointing a gun at him? I got to ask that. Because again, if you're neutralizing a threat, what threat is it? Was a threat called in or a weapon being used, or are you guessing? Unless you are trained someone is a threat. And unless you are trained to take command of a situation, what you pulling out your gun first anyway? Whoops. You're trained to give commands. Whoops, you can't do that without a crime. And you know what's funny? It's just hilarious to me because I'm being punished for doing what I'm trained to do. Yet every action that you're talking about sounds like you're being trained to terrorize the very thing that our veterans are fighting against, tyranny. You're going after our God-given rights, the very thing that our veterans are giving their lives for. But then you don't want accountability at all. And if we ask for it, we're waging war on you. You're going only in poor areas. But then, even if you get it wrong 3 out of 4 times, you're the cops. They should know what's up. You have prosecutors sending innocent men to prison for life. And the only thing that happens when it's found out that the prosecutor intentionally hid evidence or even accepted lies is you get a retrial. You don't get out of jail. Here's my thing. Here's what I do understand. Because I've actually said this before. I've actually said this to a police officer before. If you are trained to think of everybody as a criminal, don't put on a uniform. If you are trained to be afraid every time you encounter someone, don't put on a uniform. If you are trained that everyone you encounter is out to hurt you, eat your fucking gun. Because if you're that scared to do your job, don't do it. And I actually told that to a young man who refused to shake my hand. You know, one of them good guys. Because I was trying to teach my youngest son not to be afraid of police because they're actual people. He actually have uncles that are cops. But this one cop refused to shake my hand because I don't shake hands. And then I had to give him the context of where handshaking come from. And it comes from when soldiers went into villages. They extended their right hand to show people that there was no weapons in their hand and meant them no harm. So if you refuse to shake someone's hand, you're telling them that your fears wage your thoughts and actions and that you do mean them harm. And if that is you, eat your gun. See you next life. Because at the end of the day, policing isn't for everyone. I get it. It's only for the brave. But it's, for me, my ideals, because I look, again, like I said, I have uncles. And my brother's a cop. Have a lot of friends that are cops. I look at them as extension of the veterans that have actually went out and given their life. To me, they're extensions of that. Because you're supposed to be here protecting me. You actually made the decision to do that. I didn't coerce you into doing it. Nobody put a gun to your head and said, you're going to be a cop or I'm going to kill you. No, you actually put the uniform on every day because you supposedly love doing it. Because you want to keep people safe, not because you want to hurt someone. The problem is, we often think a police officer, we'll look at him, oh yeah, he used to get his ass whooped in school, so he became a cop. She used to get picked on in school, so she became a cop. And then these unintelligent idiots go out and they actually want to hurt people instead of help people. But I'm supposed to think that they're good people. Then they go and lie in reports. Then they fabricate crimes. Then I'm supposed to be okay with the system as it is. And I'm not supposed to ask any questions or even look for anything. I'm not even supposed to have any expectations. I'm just supposed to do what they tell me to do and be cool with it. Even though I'm watching DAs that accept lies. I'm watching police officers that are constantly lying. And then I'm watching men and women sit in jails. 840,000 that can't get out on bail. but we're talking about prison reform. Donald Trump actually, I had prison reform, but we got 840,000 people sitting in jail right now because of bail. Bail. What kind of reform are we doing? 840,000 people in jail because of bail, looked at as criminals, losing their jobs, house, life, for something that probably wasn't even a crime because, again, let's say 3 out of every 4 of those people are innocent. Who cares, right? Because we're still supposed to trust the cops. So what if 3 out of every 4 of those people ended up going to prison for life? Are we still supposed to label them as convicts and stuff like that, even if they're innocent? Because I'm giving you example after example after example after example. It's exhaustive. So when we talk about the few, I don't see it. Because I see the very few. And I'm not talking about the bad apples, because the bad apples to me are outnumbering the few, because the few are the actual good cops. And the problem that I have with the good cops are, if I can't reprimand my brother, do I really give a shit about him? Can I honestly say I care about you or love you if I can't reprimand you? Hell, can you honestly say you love me if you can't reprimand me? I'm just wondering, because if you spit a rod, you spoil the child, right? And you guide the child in the way they should go. I get that. What happens when that child goes astray? Do we just leave them astray? Because I know right now, a lot of my friends that are with me, that are real friends, they are complete assholes. You know what? We don't always have good conversations. We're not always the nicest to one another. Are we not friends anymore? I mean, I just want to know. Did we stop being friends because you weren't being nice to me? Because you told me, you know, Richard, that was fucked up. That wasn't great over there. I actually had one get on me tonight. Hey, you need to handle that. I don't care nothing about the rest of that. You need to handle that. That's not the right thing to do. Okay, cool. No. You need to handle that right now. So if I'm looking at it, if I'm my brother's keeper, can I say that I care about you if I can't say anything to you about things that you're doing wrong? Okay, now, I'm getting ready to start wrapping this up. Now, one of the things I constantly talk, God dang, okay, there it is. There it is, all right. Because law states commands without a crime is illegal or a show of authority stop, and I've gone over that a couple times in Terryville, Ohio. But it's an opinion that they do that every night, and we're being punished for doing the things we're trained to do. But the flat out thing is, you shouldn't be afraid of the police, right? Shouldn't be. The problem is, I don't live in the realm of shouldn't. Because the one thing I was always taught, a scared man will kill you. Because even if you trap a dog in a corner and give them no other choice, they will fight for their lives. Understand that. You have a lot of officers being trained that everybody's out to hurt them. They're getting out because they're trapped in a corner. Because they're in a mental prison that they can't speak about to anybody. there's no reform being set out for the correction of that issue. They're volatile, which is why their suicide rate is so high, because they can't talk. They can't accept responsibility because they're told that they're deities. They live with the expectation that everyone is supposed to like them and love them because they're police officers. Yet, they don't want any accountability as a police officer. So then the question has to be asked, can you have a normal interaction with someone who's pointing the gun at you? And when Jelani asked that, I was like, no. But here's what I thought was rather humorous about this. The officer, instead of answering the question, the detective created the scenario, then asked for understanding and asked a non-cop what would they do. That was the craziest part about it. He asked simply, because again, he stated, I was walking home from a baseball. Like Jelani was talking about the time he had the cop point a gun at him. I was walking home from a baseball game. I'm in my baseball uniform, cop pointing a gun at me. Cop spoke about neutralizing a threat. All right, cool. And again, you always tell, you need to calm down. You need to calm down. And can you now be calm after someone just pointed a gun at you? He then creates a scenario. Then asks a non-cop who has not been trained on what a cop would do, what he would do in that situation. The problem is, I'm going to answer it. You ready? I'm going to answer it. Answer to the question, can I have a normal conversation? Or do I understand the position of a cop? Nope, sure don't. And no, I sure can't. No, I don't understand that I'm supposed to pull a gun out on everybody that I encounter. No, I can't have a normal conversation with someone who just pulled a gun on me. 2, understand, if I'm a cop, I understand I made a decision to be a cop, to put myself in harm's way for the greater good. You know, heavy is the crown. Okay. Every time someone sees me, it's not a happy time. Things probably aren't calm, and people probably aren't having a good day. Because generally, if someone that is law enforcement is showing up, law has been broken, supposedly. The problem is they're not showing up at times of broken law. They're showing up or inserting themselves into what do you call that, positions or manufacturing encounters. It's too damn sleepy. I need to get some of this watermelon Red Bull in me. And here's the third part of that. Even as a non-cop, I'm not under the same restraints as a police officer. Just to give you an example, I have the right to protect my personal property. They have certain things called the castle doctrine. They have certain things called self-defense. Because if somebody is approaching me and I honestly feel like they're going to hurt me, guess what? If I feel I actually have to have an actual threat of imminent danger, which means the person can't be running away from me. I can't shoot them in the back, but I can light their ass up if they running towards me. Mr. Thundermaker will bark. Understand that. Cop can't do that. Because if they could, they wouldn't have this thing called, a taser and billy club and hand-to-hand training, a litany of other things that are non-lethal aside from a gun. Yet, like he said, the first thing they're going to grab is their one lethal weapon. But I'm going to close with them. Here's the funny part. Because again, we're supposed to trust him. Jelani's writing on this ride along. 6 cops jump out on a guy walking down the street looking at his phone. They tackle him and yell, "Stop resisting, and we're only handcuffing you for officer safety," both of which is illegal. And then you hear the stock language of "stop resisting." Then they begin to berate this young man and call him names. They search him, they threaten him, they force ID him, and then go, "Oops, he was one of those 3 bad decisions." Because the young man did nothing. He was guilty of nothing other than walking down the street. That body language that they're reading, the guessing that they're doing. No cap. And then what the great part about that? They didn't even make a report about it. Because again, these good guys don't want anybody to know what they did. But I'm supposed to trust that. So when we're talking about policing the police, I'm talking about standing on who you are, standing where you should be at, and understanding that you have a duty to protect you. You cannot excuse even the smallest of actions. Now, they might seem minute to you, but it stops them from doing it a second time. Because even when you look at it, you look at someone such as Derek Chauvin, whatever the hell his name is, the dude that just killed George Floyd and was convicted of murder. He had 4 previous lawsuits filed against him. They allowed him to keep working. You had a young man in Philadelphia that I told you about who had been on the job for 2 years and had planted in more than 400 cases drugs on people. So when we're talking about policing the police, we're talking about protecting ourselves. We're talking about making sure the sacrifices of our veterans that chose to protect us from enemies, foreign as well as domestic, is not done in vain. Love you guys, and good night. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, Black Light Wave. Let me see. You had 1, 2, 3. God dang. Okay, that's what's up. Appreciate you. Got me some sandwich money. Incorporation Doctrine. Real Jingy. Who else is here? Jane Doe. And hello, Jane Doe. Mad Max. Thomas Marr. And Thomas, you actually made a good point in that. For real, I've been tased multiple times in my chest and neck. I've been taken to the hospital and was done keeping me. The officer says to me, "It must be your lucky day, you go free." And seeing, for real, this is where you actually need to get those medical records and go ahead and sue that. And Incorporation Doctrine, I'll be down your way probably Wednesday, but I'll let you know for sure. Because I don't know how long I'm going to be there. So, and appreciate you, Black Light Wave. So, what I'm going to do is probably, hopefully before Friday, I'll get back. I'm going to try to do something because I've got a lot of moving parts. I had a lot of stuff go on in the last couple of days, so I just had to get this one out today. Because like I said, I've been sitting on this since the 19th of May. Yeah, I appreciate everybody that helped me out over the last couple of days. And yeah, that's it for me tonight. I love you guys, and I am out as soon as I figure out how to turn this off. Cause see, this is what happens when you start playing with stuff you ain't got no business.